Welcome to another episode in Quantum Leap series of Procurement Unplugged podcast, powered by Zycus. I am your host, Maria, and today we are back with yet another interesting topic, the end of one-size-fits-all procurement. Welcome to the era of hyper-personalization. So, think about how we've always approached procurement, right? It's been all about these really broad policies, standardized contracts that every single supplier has to sign,
Right.
fixed strategies for how we buy things, like, certain categories of goods,
Yeah.
and pretty much the same way of looking at risk, no matter who we're working with.
Mm.
But don't you think, wouldn't it be incredible if we could just move beyond that whole, one-size-fits-all approach?
Oh, absolutely.
What if every single supplier relationship we have, every contract, every purchase could be optimized like in the moment, in real time?
Yeah.
That's what we're diving into today, this idea of hyper-personalized procurement.
Okay.
And this isn't some, futuristic fantasy. It's happening right now. And it's all thanks to AI, specifically something called Agentic AI, which is basically allowing us to tailor our procurement strategies in ways we couldn't even imagine before.
Interesting.
We can adapt as market conditions change, see how our suppliers are actually performing, and even respond to risks as they pop up in real time. So to break all this down, I'm really excited to welcome a true expert to the show, Andrew, who's a procurement executive with over 11 years of experience in supplier management, contract negotiations, and really being on the leading edge of AI in procurement. So welcome, Andrew. It's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This whole idea of ditching the one-size-fits-all model,
Yeah.
it's something that procurement professionals have been grappling with for years.
Yeah.
We've been stuck in this mass production mindset, just churning out the same processes for everyone. And it just doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Think about contract templates, for example.
Okay.
They're supposed to make things easier, provide some, basic protection.
Yeah.
But they so rarely actually fit the specific needs of a supplier relationship. Like, what happens when a supplier's costs drop? You're locked into a contract that doesn't reflect that, and you miss out on potential savings.
Right. You're totally so.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it's the same with how we manage different suppliers. I mean, come on. You can't treat a strategic partner who's critical to your, core operations
Yeah,
the same way you treat a vendor you're just using for a one-time purchase.
exactly. Totally different needs.
Completely different. Yeah, they have different levels of impact on your business. They need different levels of attention.
Exactly. And it's not even just about the contracts and the relationships, right? It's about the way we do procurement, the process itself, like all those fixed workflows, the pre-approved steps we have to follow. It
Right.
just slows everything down in a world that's moving so fast. You need to be able to pivot, make decisions on the fly based on what's happening right now.
Right.
It almost feels like those giant procurement playbooks, the ones that spelled out every single detail of how things should be done. They're just, I don't know, they're
Mhm.
becoming almost relics, especially when you think about how volatile markets are now, how quickly supplier risk can change.
I see what you mean.
It's just not a static environment anymore. And that's where this agentic AI comes in, right?
It does.
It's not just about, automating the old ways of doing things. It's about enabling real-time shifts in our strategies.
Right.
So we can treat different suppliers differently based on their performance, their pricing, the risks they present.
Okay.
So can you tell us a bit more about how AI actually makes this happen?
Sure.
What's the technology behind this hyper-personalization?
So the key thing to remember with AI and procurement, it's not just about taking over those repetitive tasks, freeing up our time.
Yeah.
It's about giving us the power to make better decisions, smarter decisions, and to do that in real time.
Hmm.
So, for example, AI can look at your entire supplier base, not just based on how you've categorized them in the past, but
Yeah.
it can analyze tons of data, their delivery history, their financial stability, even news reports.
Wow.
And it can use all of that to segment them in real time based on how they're performing right now,
Yeah.
how their pricing is trending, and how strategically important they are to your business at this very moment.
That's amazing. So it's constantly reassessing and recategorizing.
Exactly. And then you have dynamic risk-based contracting.
Okay.
Imagine being able to tweak payment terms, service level agreements, even compliance requirements
Yeah.
based on a supplier's real-time risk score. So if a supplier has a perfect track record, you can offer them, like, faster payments as a reward.
Hmm.
But if the AI flags a potential risk, you can automatically trigger stricter compliance checks.
So it's like a constantly updating risk assessment that directly informs how you manage the relationship.
Exactly, you got it. And it goes beyond just risk.
Yeah.
Think about sourcing, for instance. AI can analyze all your past negotiations with a given supplier, look at the current market conditions for whatever materials you need. It can even factor in what your competitors are paying.
Wow.
And then, based on all of that data, it can suggest different approaches for your negotiations, maybe a more collaborative approach for a long-term partner versus a more hard-nosed approach for a supplier you're only working with once.
I see. So it's tailoring the strategy.
Precisely. And then you have live pricing and adaptive cost management.
Okay.
AI is constantly monitoring commodity prices, inflation, supply chain disruptions,
Well,
so you can make purchasing decisions dynamically.
well,
Instead of placing a huge order at a price that might be outdated tomorrow, the AI can tell you the optimal time to buy, or even suggest different suppliers if there's a sudden price spike.
that's incredible.
The real game changer here is that AI is doing all of this continuously. It's not about setting a policy once a year and hoping for the best.
Right.
It's about orchestrating an intelligent, personalized strategy that constantly adapts to the changing realities of your supply chain.
I love that phrase, orchestrating adaptive intelligence.
Yeah.
It really highlights why that old way of doing things with fixed annual contracts and rigid category management,
Yeah,
it just doesn't work anymore.
it really doesn't.
This idea that you can just put a supplier in a box, say you're a tier 2 widget provider, and treat them the same way for a whole year, regardless of what happens in the market or how their performance changes, that's just not realistic anymore.
No, it's not.
So with AI allowing for this kind of dynamic adjustment, it sounds like we're moving towards what you called microsegmentation.
We are.
Can you explain what that means?
Of course. So microsegmentation is this idea that instead of lumping suppliers together in broad categories
Yeah.
with standardized terms and conditions,
Right.
we start treating each supplier almost as a unique entity, like a dynamic partner.
Okay.
Their terms of engagement, they're not set in stone. They evolve based on how they're doing, what's happening in the market, and what your specific needs are at any given time.
So it's a much more like granular and responsive way of managing your suppliers.
It is. It's all about recognizing that every supplier relationship is different.
This is all super fascinating, but I know our listeners are probably thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but what does this actually look like in practice? Can you give us some real-world examples of companies that are using this AI-powered hyper-personalization?
Absolutely. I've got a few examples from different industries.
Yeah.
So first up, in retail and consumer goods,
Okay.
there was this major global retailer that was using a very, standard pricing model with their
Yeah.
suppliers. They implemented AI-driven pricing optimization, which meant their supplier agreements were constantly being updated based on real-time sales data,
Uh-huh.
changes in logistics costs, even what their competitors were charging.
That's amazing.
And the results were impressive. They saw a 7% reduction in their overall procurement spend in just 12 months.
Wow, that's huge.
Huge impact, yeah.
Yeah.
Then, in the pharmaceutical industry, there was this big company that realized they couldn't treat all their suppliers the same way. They had these strategic research partners who are crucial for developing new drugs.
Right.
And then they had suppliers of, like, commodity chemicals,
Yeah.
very different relationships. So they used AI-powered segmentation to customize how they engaged with each supplier. Key strategic suppliers, the ones driving innovation, were offered faster payment terms, and they were brought into collaborative projects much earlier in the process,
Interesting.
while their low-risk commodity suppliers were managed through more automated channels.
Makes sense.
This led to better collaboration with those key partners, stronger relationships, and ultimately faster innovation cycles.
That's fantastic.
And lastly, in aerospace and manufacturing,
Okay.
a leading firm was having some issues with supplier reliability, so they implemented AI-driven risk scoring. This allowed them to adjust contract terms dynamically. Suppliers with a proven track record of on-time deliveries and high quality,
Yeah.
they got faster payment approvals as a reward. While suppliers who had shown some risk factors in the past were required to provide additional guarantees.
Smart.
This resulted in a 30% drop in late deliveries and a big improvement in overall supplier reliability.
Wow, those are some serious results.
Yeah.
7% cost savings, 30% reduction in late deliveries. I mean, those are numbers that any procurement leader would be thrilled with.
Oh, sure.
So, for someone listening to this who's thinking, okay, I'm sold, hyper-personalization is the future, what's the first step they should take to actually implement this in their organization?
Great question. Here's a three-step playbook to get you started.
Okay.
Step one, audit your supplier base. You need to figure out which suppliers are truly strategic, the ones who are essential to your business, and which ones are more transactional.
Okay.
This segmentation is critical because AI-driven personalization is all about tailoring your approach
Mm.
based on those different types of relationships.
Right.
Step two, invest in AI-driven analytics. You got to move beyond those static reports that just tell you what happened last month. You need real-time insights into supplier performance, pricing trends, potential risk factors.
Yeah.
AI can analyze mountains of data to give you that up-to-the-minute visibility.
That's so important.
It is. And step three, start small and then scale up.
Okay.
Don't try to revamp your whole procurement process overnight. Pick one category or one type of supplier relationship to test out hyper-personalization. Maybe you start by dynamically adjusting payment terms for a few of your top-performing suppliers. Once you see how that works, you can expand to other areas, like sourcing, pricing, risk management.
So it's about making progress, even if it's incremental.
Exactly.
Starting with those data-driven adjustments and gradually building towards a fully AI-driven strategy.
You got it.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's clear that procurement is going through a huge transformation, moving away from those rigid one-size-fits-all approaches and towards a much more dynamic, intelligent way of working. And it's all powered by AI, adapting in real time to supplier behavior, market conditions, risks. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And for everyone listening, just to recap the key takeaways. Number one, it's time to stop thinking of procurement as a one-size-fits-all function. Number two, start exploring how you can use AI to better segment your suppliers, dynamically adjust contract terms, and personalize your overall engagement with your supply base. And finally, remember, the future of procurement is dynamic. It's happening in real time, and it's driven by the power of AI. So thanks again for tuning in to Procurement Unplugged. We'll be back soon with more conversations exploring the cutting edge of procurement. Until then, keep innovating.